Good evening from ABC News, New York. I'm John Kelly. Tonight, in the latest series of public appearances, President Nixon flies to Nashville to dedicate the new home of the Grand Ole Opry. The lawyer who worked on Mr. Nixon's donation of his vice presidential papers says the original deed to the papers was destroyed. Randolph Hearst tells his daughter's kidnappers, "I am doing all I can," and renews his pledge to meet their demands. And ministers from the major oil-producing states meet in Vienna to discuss prices and the oil embargo. I'll have details on these and other stories in a moment.
Does this come in a size larger?
Just sold it. The zipper went up all right.
Maybe if I took off a few pounds. But how?
Like I did. The AIDS plan.
AIDS reducing plan candy?
Mm-hmm. When you take one or two with a hot drink before meals, AIDS helps you curb your appetite without any drugs. On the AIDS plan, you eat less, and you lose weight naturally.
You've made a sale.
See if you can guess what car this is, just by looking at the inside. Everywhere you look, there's luxurious detail, from the crushed velour upholstery right down to the plush carpeting. And all this luxury is standard. What car do you think this is? Wrong. It's a little Dodge Dart. The new Dart Special Edition. All the luxury you could ask for, and a car with a great reputation for dependability. Dart Special Edition. A luxurious new little car from Dodge.
President Nixon appeared on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry tonight. Just one day after speaking before a group of businessmen in Chicago, Mr. Nixon flew to Nashville to take part in tonight's dedication ceremonies for the Opry's new $15 million home. ABC White House correspondent Tom Gerald reports.
Nashville's Grand Ole Opry moved into its new $15 million performance hall before a packed crowd anxious to hear the music and see the dignitaries. The president had greeted Mrs. Nixon earlier as she returned from a 6-day official visit to South America. Together they shared a front row view of the picking and singing and dancing which remains unchanged in the plush new hall. There were some grumblings about turning the Opry Hall dedication into what some felt was a support the president rally. Outside, the president had encountered picket signs, including one which read, "Opry yes, Nixon no." But inside the auditorium, it was all good fun and games, including a piano performance by the president to mark the First Lady's 62nd birthday.
Therefore, has those combinations which are so essential to America's character at a time that America needs character. Because today, one serious note, let me tell you, the peace of the world for generations, maybe centuries to come, will depend not just on America's military might, which is the greatest in the world, or our wealth, which is the greatest in the world, but it's going to depend on our character, our belief in ourselves, our love of our country, our willingness to not only wear the flag, but for stand up for the flag, and country music does that.
Singer Roy Acuff added some light moments with a yellow yo-yo and some advice on how to use it.
We're not in any hurry. He don't need to get back up there quick anyway. We need him down here for a while. Now, so turn your handle. Turn your handle and let it well. Now jerk it back.
I'll stay here and try to learn how to use the yo-yo. You'll go up and be president.
The whole evening was as American as apple pie. Just the type of setting to take your wife to for her birthday, or take a president to have him seen doing more than just sweating out Watergate questions. Tom Gerald, ABC News, Nashville.
The lawyer who prepared the deed for the president's now controversial donation of his vice presidential papers said today that the original document no longer exists. Frank DeMarco says the 1969 deed was destroyed as part of routine legal procedure when a new one was drawn up in 1970. At issue is whether Mr. Nixon donated the papers to the National Archives in time to qualify for a $576,000 tax deduction.
For most kids, growing up means a mouthful of cavities, especially during the cavity-prone years, ages 5 to 15. But some kids don't get so many. One reason? Colgate with MFP fluoride. Only your dentist can give teeth a better fluoride treatment than Colgate. Even Colgate can't guarantee just one cavity per checkup, but most Colgate kids get fewer cavities because only your dentist can give teeth a better fluoride treatment than Colgate. This just might be the end of the powder age, the day you change your ideas about laundry detergents. Why? Because Dynamo is here.
Dynamo, so different, just a quarter cup does the whole wash and more. Sheets, towels, even motor oil on this synthetic shirt. Not even powder detergents can do all that. And Dynamo does it all at powder prices.
This just might be the end of the powder age. Dynamo does more.
In a written statement today, Randolph Hearst said he had not broken his word to his daughter Patricia's captors, who have held her for nearly 6 weeks now. Hearst said, "I am doing everything I can to carry out their demands." But he said the demands made in last Saturday's taped messages from the kidnappers would take more time to work out. In Lino Lakes, Minnesota, the wife of a bank executive has been missing since early Friday morning, apparently the victim of another kidnapping. ABC's Bob Petty narrates this report.
Police and FBI agents now control the road leading to the house where Gunnar Kronholm waits word of his wife Eunice. The St. Paul banker hasn't seen her since 7:30 Friday morning when he left his suburban home for the Drover State Bank. His only contact with the alleged kidnappers, a phone call yesterday.
At 3:40 p.m. yesterday, I received a call in my office stating, "We have your wife. Deliver all the money you can at a station at..." I was unable to distinguish the description of the location. The caller hung up and did not repeat. No instructions for her release or time of delivery for ransom money were made, or the ransom amount. I'm waiting for further instructions and will comply with the demands of the abductors. My only concern is for the safe return of my wife, Eunice.
FBI agents now surround the house, but Kronholm has promised the caller that they will not interfere, that open channels of communications exist. There has, however, been no new word. Bob Petty, ABC News.
Little Rock, Arkansas, once the rallying cry of the civil rights movement, was today the site of the Second National Black Political Convention. Delegates to the convention are finding that they must contend not only with prejudice and apathy, but also with division in their ranks. ABC's David Snell has this report.
Unity without uniformity was the convention's original theme, but some questioned if the theme still stood. Fear of a black nationalist takeover had kept some moderates away, including co-chairman Congressman Charles Diggs. Altogether, there were only about a third as many delegates on hand to sing the black national anthem as there were at the original convention 2 years ago. The proceedings, led by Gary Mayor Richard Hatcher, scrupulously democratic, and one speaker drew standing ovations expressing the kinship between blacks and what he referred to as other niggerized Americans.
American niggers are black, brown, red, yellow, white, old, young, rich, poor, truck driver niggers, West Virginia coal miner niggers, senior citizen niggers. There are millions of people, and what we as black people have got to understand is that we ain't cornering the market on niggerism.
Convening today at Little Rock Central High School, where federal troops were used to enforce court-ordered integration 16 years ago, convention leaders were eschewing controversy, stressing pragmatic politics. In the hallways, books, banners, and pamphlets depicting the situation in America the convention steering committee described as one of unrelieved crisis for black people. In the classrooms, the nitty-gritty of change.
If you don't have people registered, they can't vote.
If you haven't got any money, that doesn't mean don't run.
Before this convention is over, it is expected to pass a resolution calling for the impeachment of Richard Nixon. Most delegates here consider that to be non-controversial. But Gary Mayor Richard Hatcher said he would sooner see the president twist slowly in the wind. David Snell, ABC News, Little Rock, Arkansas.
In Vienna, the world's major oil-producing nations met today and heard Saudi Arabia call for lower oil prices beginning next month. But Iran's representative, the president of the 12-nation group, told newsmen he does not expect prices to go down. A final decision on prices and on whether to lift the oil embargo against the U.S. is expected when the oil ministers meet again tomorrow.
Hey, look at the table I found at the auction.
Oh, Hank, for a guy who runs a natural food store, you sure don't know what makes wood look clean and natural. Try Favor.
New formula Favor. What's wrong with my polish?
Yours just takes off surface dirt. Favor really cleans. Cuts through dirt and old wax.
Favor picked up more dirt. Now that's a clean shine.
And a clean shine is a natural shine.
New Favor for a clean, natural shine.
Oil, the top priority issue for America and the world. Lifeblood for the economic well-being of the industrial nations of the West. ABC News Close-Up cuts through the confusion and contradictions surrounding the current oil shortage and lays bare the root causes of what we now call the energy crisis. Watch ABC News Close-Up on oil.
Wednesday night at 10, 9 Central on ABC.
This is that time of year when baseball fans begin to eagerly follow reports from spring training camps, and the younger fans begin to turn out for Little League tryouts. At several places in the country, women's liberation is making inroads in the heretofore solid male wall of Little League baseball, as witnessed this report from ABC's Elizabeth Coleman.
Today, for the first time in New Jersey, girls tried out for Little Leagues along with the boys. It didn't come easy. Last January, a state civil rights division ordered that girls be allowed to play in the leagues. When appeals failed to change that ruling, most of the state's 330 Little League divisions shut down in protest. Tenafly's division was the only one that stayed open.
The men in our town decided that we'd rather have the 360 boys play than to deprive them of playing because a few girls wanted to play.
What do you think about girls playing?
I'm not in agreement with it. I believe it's a contact sport, and I feel that the girls shouldn't be playing, but I'd still rather see the boys play than not play.
27 girls signed up. Like the boys, some showed great promise. Others didn't.
Well, I think if I want to play, I should be able to, if the boys can. If I'm not able to, I don't think the boys should be able to.
The boys, on the whole, didn't think much of the idea. You want them to be on?
No.
Why not?
Because it's not a sport for girls.
Why?
Because girls can't do anything.
Like it or not, the law says the girls must play. And after the tryouts inside were over, things got back to normal outside. For some, the law hardly seemed necessary. Elizabeth Coleman, ABC News, Tenafly, New Jersey.
That's the world and national news. I'm John Kelly. Thank you, and good night.
This has been the ABC Weekend News with John Kelly. Watch the ABC Evening News with Howard K. Smith and Harry Reasoner, Monday through Friday, in color. This has been a presentation of ABC News.
Underworld mileage and lots more. See your #1 Ford dealer now.
In tomorrow's Wall Street Journal, there's at least one article that can be useful, important, or profitable to you. Tomorrow's Journal. Pick it up at a newsstand.
KNXT, Los Angeles.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Sunday News with Bob Schieffer.
Good evening. Illinois Congressman Robert McClory, the second-ranking Republican on the House committee studying presidential impeachment, says tonight that Judge John Sirica has decided to give the committee that secret report compiled by the Watergate grand jury. Various news agencies have quoted sources close to the grand jury as saying that report deals with what role, if any, the president played in the Watergate cover-up. Judge Sirica is scheduled to announce tomorrow his decision on what is to be done with the report. McClory's disclosure came tonight in an interview with CBS News correspondent Ike Pappas in Elgin, Illinois.
What do you think Judge Sirica will do tomorrow, Monday? Do you think that he'll turn over the material that he has on the president and so forth?
Well, I would expect so. I would hope so, because the grand jury did not deliver the materials to Judge Sirica for him to make some decision on. They delivered the materials to Judge Sirica, the sealed envelopes and the suitcase of documents and other materials, for transmission to the House Judiciary Committee.
What sort of an indication, what sort of a hint do you have?
Well, I don't like to respond to that, because no matter how I responded, it would be a dead giveaway as to where the source of my information. But my source is responsible.
Can you just give me some hint? I mean, how good is this?
What is it? I couldn't possibly give you some hint without it being a complete giveaway as to where what the hint is based upon. So I can't go beyond that, but I do have a very definite indication that the judge is going to act favorably on our request.
President Nixon's lawyers have not opposed sending the briefcase of grand jury evidence to Capitol Hill, because they say the president has already sent the Judiciary Committee the same evidence he turned over to the grand jury. But lawyers for some of Mr. Nixon's indicted former aides are seeking to block any transfer of the evidence, and CBS News has learned that the grand jury received evidence that could be crucial to the impeachment process, in addition to the material supplied by the White House. The evidence relates to President Nixon's ambiguous discussion of hush money with his aides on March 21st. A well-informed source has told CBS News that the grand jury evidence contains detailed proof that a final payment of $75,000 in White House hush money was delivered to a Watergate defendant's lawyers several hours after Mr. Nixon discussed the payments with his aides on March 21st. That evidence, pinpointing a payment several hours after Mr. Nixon's discussion, could indicate that the president did not firmly rule out payments to buy the silence of witnesses. If not, that could be obstruction of justice, which is an impeachable offense. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.
The Judiciary Committee has also asked for additional tapes and files from the White House, and Presidential aide Bryce Harlow said today that the administration's refusal to hand over those materials will actually benefit the committee. Harlow says that until the committee decides what an impeachable offense is, the investigation will wander aimlessly. He said the White House refusal to help the committee focus, or will help the committee focus on the investigation and decide specifically what they're trying to do. Wilbur Mills, the vice chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee that is studying the president's income tax return, said today that he has seen no evidence of fraud on Mr. Nixon's part himself. As for his previous statement that the president would resign once the committee makes its investigation of Mr. Nixon's taxes public, Mills said that was just a personal opinion. He said he based it on the belief that people understand taxes and that many people would feel the president should be liable for more taxes than he has paid.
This is NBC Nightly News, Monday, March 18th, reported by John Chancellor.
Good evening. Judge John Sirica said today he will send a secret grand jury report on President Nixon and the Watergate cover-up to impeachment investigators in the House of Representatives. Sirica allowed lawyers in the case 2 days to appeal his decision. In that decision, Sirica said he had no choice but to send the grand jury's report and supporting evidence to the House. The grand jury is the one which indicted 4 presidential associates, Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Mitchell, and Coulson, on charges of conspiracy in the cover-up. The judge described the report as a compilation of information and said it contained no formal charges, was not accusatory. But he said he feels that the evidence in the report is material to the impeachment inquiry and said it is obligatory that the information on the president be given to the Judiciary Committee. Carl Stern has more on the story from Washington.
Judge Sirica's opinion confirmed 2 things: that the secret grand jury report was principally concerned with the president's conduct, and that the allegations would be of strong interest to the House impeachment inquiry. Said the judge, the person on whom the report focuses is the President of the United States. He said he had carefully examined the contents of the report and that there was no question regarding their materiality to the House impeachment inquiry. Said the judge, the court concludes that delivery to the committee is eminently proper and indeed obligatory. At the courthouse, a lawyer for the Special Prosecutor's Office picked up the decision. Then White House lawyers picked up a set. The decision takes effect Wednesday unless there's an appeal. Reached during a luncheon, Frank Strickler, a lawyer for John Ehrlichman and H.R. Haldeman, said there would be an appeal. He denied that it was really being done for the president.
We were asked over at the other meeting if we had any contact with the White House, and the answer is absolutely none.
You're not doing this for the president?
We are not. We're doing it for our client. No further comment.
Just explain what you mean by the...
Judge Sirica was also there. He declined to say much, except that he was sure his reading of the grand jury report wouldn't affect his handling of the upcoming Watergate trials.
Well, in my opinion, any defendant, any person who happens to be a defendant in this jurisdiction, in my opinion, can get just as fair a trial here as any jurisdiction in the country.
Mr. Strickler was just through here telling us that he was going to appeal your decision. Are you sure you're going to be upheld on appeal?
I'm not going to comment upon that.
Okay. An appeal could take several weeks or longer, although the Special Prosecutor's Office intends to ask the courts to move quickly. Carl Stern, NBC News, Washington.
Both the White House and the Judiciary Committee were waiting for the judge's decision with considerable concern today. Here are reports from both places, beginning with Ray Scherer's report on the reaction of the Judiciary Committee.
However long it takes the secret report to reach the House Judiciary Committee, members will be glad to receive it. They think the information in it will save their investigation time and effort.
The matter was obviously intended for the committee, and I think the committee should receive it.
Do you fear that the appeal might delay things?
I don't envision it. I think that the appeal can be speedily disposed of one way or another.
Well, I'm concluding that if there are delays, we're going to need more time. I did state, and I want to make this very emphatic and clear, that April 30th was a date that we'd imposed on ourselves, but I didn't want to be locked in, and the committee understands it as such. We've got a lot of material that we've got to examine, and we've got a very, very responsible report to make.
Until they have examined the grand jury report, members cannot assess how valuable it will be in speeding the committee's investigation. And as for making the April 30th target date, Chairman Rodino is warning delay by the White House will only make that impossible. Ray Scherer, NBC News at the Capitol.
President Nixon's lawyer, James St. Clair, said earlier the White House had no objection to Judge Sirica sending the grand jury report to the House Judiciary Committee, and that was reconfirmed today. As for sending additional White House material to the committee, there is no indication President Nixon is ready to do that, even though St. Clair is discussing the matter with committee representatives. President Nixon has tied his position to past presidents and the preservation of the office.
I will do nothing to weaken the office of the presidency, because we need a strong president at this time rather than a weak one.
The Chicago audience seemed to endorse that position. But past presidents who have resisted congressional requests for White House material were not the subjects of impeachment investigations. In effect, Chicago was a campaign appearance. Saturday night at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville was even more so. There were no questions from the audience, only a brief speech from the president about the foreign policy achievements of his administration, and a good deal of joking and piano playing. Richard Nixon didn't look like a man undergoing the most severe test of his political career, and that was exactly the impression he wanted to leave. Tom Brokaw, NBC News.
And when President Nixon holds a press conference in Houston, Texas tomorrow, NBC News will cover it live on television and radio beginning at 8 o'clock in the evening, Eastern Time. The Arab oil embargo was lifted today by most of the producing countries. Finally, we'll report from Vienna on their decision and check on what it will mean to American motorists. There have been developments in the Mitchell-Stans trial. Rosemary Woods was on the stand today, and we'll have the details. And we'll have a special essay tonight on Judge Sirica on the occasion of his 70th birthday. The 5-month Arab oil embargo against the United States was lifted today by most of the Arab oil producers. 6 of the Arab countries ended the embargo effective tomorrow. But 2 others, Libya and Syria, which opposed ending the embargo, will continue it. And one more, Algeria, said it is ending the embargo only for a while, until the 1st of June, when the 9 Arab countries will meet again to review the position of all of the Arab oil producers. Today's decision was reached at a meeting of the Arab oil ministers in Vienna. And here by satellite is a report from John Dancy.
The meeting lasted only an hour. Most of the important decisions had been reached in private sessions late last night. The end of the embargo was announced in a crowded news conference. Oil Minister Bilal Abdel Salam of Algeria said Syria and Libya had refused to go along with lifting the embargo, and Algeria only provisionally, subject to review June the 1st. There was a clear threat that the embargo might be reinstated unless the United States continued to work for a Middle East settlement. Sheikh Zaki Yamani of Saudi Arabia, who had led the fight to end the embargo, said production cuts announced at the beginning of the Middle East war would be restored.
To a level which enables the various member countries to meet the new resolution. That's to enable the member countries to export to the United States of America the same amount of oil which we used to export in the past, and to increase our exports to both Italy and West Germany. I have no accurate information, but I think the United States will get enough oil for their requirements.
How soon will the United States begin to receive this additional amount of Saudi Arabian oil?
The distance between the export ports and the United States, between the Arabian Gulf and the United States, it takes 2 months. But between Algeria and the United States, it is much less than that.
When will you begin to increase production? Tomorrow?
Oh, yes.
Libya and Syria did not go along with lifting the embargo, perhaps because they realized that the oil weapon, once laid down, will never again be the effective weapon that it was this time. Presumably, the United States will now begin to get itself in a position so that the oil embargo will never again be the threat that it was this time. John Dancy, NBC News, in Vienna.
The stock markets in New York, which gained last week in anticipation of an end to the oil embargo, fell today in light trading. The Dow Jones Industrials were off more than 13 points. The average share price fell 45 cents on the New York Exchange and 9 cents on the American Exchange. In Houston, Z.D. Bonner, president of Gulf Oil, had some predictions on gasoline supplies and prices.
This don't mean the end of high prices. If anything, the prices will probably go up a little more, because you see the whole thing is made up of, let's say, $5.50 domestic crude, and then all the rest of the crude is imported crude. So we're now going to have more imported crude, maybe more imported products at high prices. So if you're comparing, let's say, $5.50 domestic crude, and then we're going to have $12 to $15 imported crude and more of it, I'm afraid this means prices may go up a little more. The shortage won't be entirely over for more complex reasons I can get into if you wish, but my guess is that we'll go into a situation where we've got about a 5 to 8% shortage, sort of a nagging shortage, but not a critical one, not the kind we would have had this summer.
Bonner pretty much summed up the attitude of the United States oil industry, and from Irving R. Levine, we have some indications of just what American motorists can expect when Arab oil starts coming into the country again.
Barriers like this may disappear, at least temporarily, once Arab oil starts arriving in the United States again in about 6 weeks. Also, to help the badly hurt recreation industry, the administration may soon allow gasoline stations to open on Sundays again. This worries some energy officials who consider Sunday closings the most effective conservation measure, more so than lower speed limits or daylight savings. American motorists used about 15% less gasoline during the embargo, and energy officials stress that conservation must continue, because even if Arab oil comes in at pre-embargo levels, we still will have 3 to 8% less oil than we need. The end of the embargo won't cause the price of gasoline to come down. In fact, the price will probably go up still more, because Arab oil is twice as expensive as most oil produced in this country. The high price of gasoline may cause Americans to continue driving less. But if Americans return to their old driving habits, energy officials say the lines at gas stations could become longer than ever.
Irving R. Levine, NBC News, Washington.
In the Middle East, fighting on the Syrian-Israeli front continued today for the 7th straight day. In Washington, the State Department said that it will help Egypt sweep mines from the Suez Canal, which has been closed for almost 7 years. The State Department said Egypt requested the help in its efforts to reopen the waterway.
Are you getting burned by your present homeowner's insurance? Are your claims settled quickly with courteous personal service? Are you paying for the wrong coverage? You better find out. See your independent insurance agent. He's on your side. He'll select a policy from a number of insurance companies. That way you'll get just the protection you need at a fair cost. Get this free booklet from your professional independent insurance agent wherever you see this symbol.
I'd worked for the paper about 2 weeks when the old man said he wanted to see me at the end of the day. I was scared to death.
You think this is good?
Yes, I do, sir.
So do I. So you're going to make $5 more a month.
Well, my head still hurt, and my stomach was so upset it felt like a bag full of doorknobs. Now, that was 40 years ago, and I still take Alka-Seltzer.
For over 40 years, nothing has worked better than Alka-Seltzer.
When you got a McCulloch chainsaw, you've got power by the hour in your hand. With McCulloch, you're the master, 'cause you keep a cutting faster. You're in luck when you got a McCulloch chainsaw.
$99.95, McCulloch.
Here's a late development from NBC News. Eunice Kronholm, the kidnapped wife of the Minnesota banker, was found unharmed late today at a supermarket in Brunsville, Minnesota. Mrs. Kronholm was abducted Friday. Her husband paid a $200,000 ransom earlier today, but his wife was not released immediately as her kidnappers had promised. Mrs. Kronholm said she escaped from her abductors. FBI agents arrested one suspect before her escape. He was identified as James Johnson of Lakeville, Minnesota.
Patricia Hearst has now been in the hands of her kidnappers for 6 weeks. Today, officials of the giveaway food program intended to gain her release worked on new ways to convince the kidnappers to let the girl go, a widely expanded food distribution plan. The new plan may be made public tomorrow. James Earl Ray, assassin of Dr. Martin Luther King, went before a federal judge today in Nashville, Tennessee, and asked to be taken out of solitary confinement. This was Ray's first court appearance in 5 years when he pleaded guilty to killing the civil rights leader and was sent to prison for 99 years.
Ray told the court solitary confinement has weakened his physical and mental condition. Such a condition, he claims, will lessen his chances for arguing for a new trial. Warden Jim Rose testified that Ray's own reluctance to accept a prison job and his penchant for escape attempts result in continuing close security. The close watch over Ray was evident at today's hearing. It was not until he was safely back at the Tennessee State Prison that he was allowed to talk, and then only briefly.
James Earl, are you satisfied with your court appearance today? What do you say?
Much choice, isn't it?
Are you satisfied?
Oh, it's all right.
Are you optimistic as to the outcome of the trial?
I can't say. James Earl Ray is back in solitary confinement tonight, a confinement he says is a hazard to his health and unnecessary. The judge reserved decision, and in the meantime, a complete physical examination of Ray has been ordered. Tom Smith, WSM-TV News, Nashville.
The Mitchell Stands trial in New York was considerably enlivened today when the prosecution summoned a well-known witness to the stand. The witness was Rosemary Woods, President Nixon's personal secretary. Robert Hager was in court today when Miss Woods testified.
Miss Woods' appearance here was brief. The prosecution had summoned her because from time to time, the White House used to get lists of those who had made political contributions. Miss Woods' appearance came at the end of a long day of tedious testimony. There was a stir in the courtroom when she took the stand. Miss Woods wore a dress of red, white, and blue. She had some complimentary things to say about the defendants. When she was asked whether she could identify John Mitchell, "I can," she said, "and he's a fine man." Moments later, Miss Woods extended the compliment to Maurice Stans, "Another fine man," she said. Miss Woods' business in this case was to identify a list of 1972 contributors prepared by the Committee to Re-elect the President. The list was drawn up 2 months after Robert Vesco had made a secret contribution of $200,000 to the Nixon campaign. But under questioning from the prosecution, Ms. Woods verified that Vesco's name was not included on the White House list of contributors. On cross-examination, defense lawyers got Ms. Woods to say that Vesco's name eventually did appear on another list used for inviting people to White House social events. But Vesco was never invited. He was indicted and fled the country. Robert Hager, NBC News, New York.
Public school teachers in Kansas City went on strike today for higher pay and other issues. 13 of the city's 98 schools were shut down.
I've got a secret in my refrigerator. It's there, way in back. See? An open box of Arm & Hammer baking soda. It actually absorbs food odors. Whether you have cheese, onions, broccoli, even fish, it'll keep your refrigerator sweeter, cleaner, and fresher smelling. At the end of 2 months, put in a new box and pour the old box down a drain to help make it clean smelling. Arm & Hammer baking soda. A nice little secret for your refrigerator.
Coffee.
Yes, please.
Sugar.
Nope.
Cream.
Nope.
Caffeine.
Of course I want real coffee. Hey, wait a minute.
What?
That's caffeine?
Mm-hmm.
I thought caffeine was dark and rich like coffee.
No, it's white and bitter like a bitter pill. And it does nothing good for the taste of coffee.
Oh, it is bitter. What's it doing in coffee?
It's keeping you up at night.
What if I don't want it?
Well, then you don't have to have it. Get some decaffeinated coffee.
Do you what? I don't think I remember that.
Just remember decaf.
For years, gun control advocates have argued that one reason murder rates are so high in this country is that it is so easy to get guns, especially handguns. Most states have laws regulating who may have a gun and who may not. But as we learned in this report from Russ Ewing in Chicago, those laws don't always prevent people from getting their hands on guns.
More than 500,000 people in Chicago have obeyed the city ordinance requiring registration of all guns, but officials don't know how many illegal or unregistered guns there are in the city. They estimate that at least 1 out of 50 people in the city carries a gun during the day, and that even more carry guns after dark. These guns, 131 of them were taken from Chicago residents in one night. Only 13 of them were registered. Chicago police confiscated 17,000 unregistered guns last year, mostly from drug addicts, burglars, and murderers who had either stolen them or purchased them illegally. At night, working on tips from known drug addicts, we tested the availability of illegal guns. With a camera crew filming from 1 block away, we went to several places where we were told we might find people with guns to sell. One effort to make a gun deal with a patron in a tavern was picked up on a wireless microphone. And I want to buy a couple of guns if you can. What type? Anything you got. Yeah. Good ones, yeah. I want some good stuff.
But I talk with them and I find out how much he's buying them or what I have to know.
I don't care whether it's good as heat or not. Just as long as it's good. We made the deal and 6 others like it that same night. The other willing sellers included a prostitute, 2 teenagers, one from a middle-class suburb, and a pedestrian in one of the city's high-crime districts. Our total takes that night, 7 unregistered guns for about $300. Local police and prison officials were not surprised at our easy access to illegal weapons. What would you say if I would tell you that I went out in Chicago without any prearrangement and bought 7 guns in one night?
Well, I would say you ran out of money. It's just too many guns on the streets, and guns are too easy to get. And I bet you found guns in all neighborhoods. Well, I don't mean from a local gun dealer, but I mean from street sources.
We turned the 6 handguns and a rifle over to the Cook County State's Attorney as proof that the 5-year-old gun registration law has not and cannot rid the city of illegal guns. Law enforcement officials agree that in the highly mobile American society, scattered local gun control laws are ineffective, and that until there's federal gun legislation, illegal guns will be available to anyone who has enough money to buy them. Russ Ewing, NBC News, Chicago.
Britain's minority Labour government faced its first crisis today and managed to surmount it. It managed to surmount the crisis, though, only by agreeing to keep, for the time being, the tough wage and price controls imposed by the Conservatives when they were in office.
There's not much difference in pain relievers that you can see. But in your bloodstream, the differences are very real. While all three leading pain relievers reach an effective level in minutes, in the final analysis, only one of them hits and holds the highest level, Anacin. This difference is the extra pain reliever Anacin provides when you have a headache. Remember, the difference in Anacin is the higher level of pain reliever. Anacin relieves pain fast.
Winters are rugged in Sweden. That's why the simple pleasures mean more to a man. Like Borkum Riff cherry liqueur flavored tobacco. A sweeter, milder smoke. Borkum Riff, one of life's simple pleasures.
This is quite an eventful week for federal judge John Sirica, who has become nationally known because of Watergate. Sirica will be 70 years old tomorrow, which means that he will have to step down as the chief judge of the federal district court in the District of Columbia. But Sirica is a vigorous man, and he will continue to hear cases, including the Watergate conspiracy trial involving people who used to be very close to the president. There was a party for Judge Sirica today, and here's a report on that from Douglas Kiker.
Today, an imposing array of federal legal officers turned out at a farewell luncheon in Judge Sirica's honor. Among them, Attorney General William Saxby, Assistant Attorney General Henry Peterson, Watergate Committee Counsel Sam Dash, and Federal Judge George Hart, who will become the new Chief Judge and thus assign any future Watergate trials and grand jury investigations. Hart presented Sirica a farewell gift from his fellow judges.
I'm going to continue on as an active judge, as George said. I don't know how I can be more active than I have been recently, but I'll do the best I can. I'm proud of the record that has been made, and I might say, if it had not been for George Hart and his great administrative ability, I don't think we would be in the wonderful condition that we are today.
So, Judge Sirica is retiring as the Chief Judge of Washington's Federal District Court, but he will continue to be an important central figure in the Watergate investigation. When H.R. Haldeman, John Mitchell, and John Ehrlichman, and 4 other Watergate defendants come up for trial in September, the presiding judge will be John J. Sirica. Douglas Kiker, NBC News, Washington.
So we'll see and hear a lot about Judge Sirica for quite a while to come from the looks of things. This is an exclusive picture of the judge in his robes in his courtroom, taken by Stanley Tredick of our staff. Sirica off stage or off the bench is not what he seems to be when the court is in solemn session. The associates say that he is easy to get along with, friendly and open. And it's been reported that he gets butterflies in his stomach when he peeks into his courtroom and sees it jammed with spectators. And butterflies would perhaps be the right description for anyone who has been as deeply involved in as many pivotal decisions in the Watergate case as Judge Sirica. This is the man who read the letter last year which broke the case open, a letter from James McCord, one of the men caught in the Watergate. Sirica had not believed that the first Watergate trial had turned up the truth. McCord told him that political pressure and perjury had been involved, and after that it all began to come unstuck. Sirica can be a very tough man indeed. He used to be known as Maximum John. Had he not played a major role in these matters, the story of Watergate might be a different one today. And as he passes his 70th birthday with a lot of work and a very complex conspiracy trial still to be completed, John Sirica, the Italian immigrant son from Connecticut, knows one thing for sure. When they write the history books about these years, he'll be mentioned. Good night for NBC News.